pero si no tiene salud, pues obviamente tendrá que hacerse un lado. También lo he dicho, nunca le voy a decir que no a la selección, pero hoy no pasa por mí, ¿eh?
Pero siempre va a estar presente como un hombre que puede volver a la selección mexicana de fútbol.
Físicamente no está apto, sí se tendrá que hacer a un lado.
A mí se me hace irrespetuoso, para mí muy irrespetuoso.
Puede ser fair play el mensaje y tiene mucha razón, que si no está bien, que se haga a un lado. Pero Miguel Herrera no es el indicado para decidir eso.
Dijo lo que todos estamos pensando, todos los que seguimos a la selección mexicana de fútbol.
Pedir él públicamente que el actual técnico de la selección mexicana de fútbol se tenga que hacer a un lado. ¿Quién es Miguel Herrera?
Porque mis compañeros son miguelistas, son herreristas. Les encanta el Piojo y se emocionan con él, como tú me comprenderás.
Ayer Miguel Herrera le dio una entrevista a ESPN y dijo que si no tiene salud, usted debería hacerse a un lado. ¿Tiene alguna respuesta, algún comentario sobre lo que dijo Miguel Herrera?
Ninguna.
For more on the state of the Mexican national team, we're joined now by our colleague John Sutclif of ESPN Deportes there at Estadio Azteca with the entire afición there behind him. John, great to have you with us here on the show. Before we start talking about managers, Herc and I were just talking about whether Mexico fans should be optimistic or pessimistic. You're there at the Azteca. How are they feeling right now about qualifying for the World Cup, and what do you make of the performance against El Salvador?
Hi, Sebas and Erk. I think, don't confuse activity with accomplishment. Obviously, the Mexican team qualified, but I can tell you it was a boring game, a boring qualifying game. I remember in '94 when El Abuelo Cruz scored a goal and the country went crazy. When Jared Borghetti had that header to go to South Africa. This has been a very sad clincher for the World Cup. We had mariachis, you might have had the players trying to celebrate, but it was a very sad day. You know, people pay a ticket to have some fun, to have distraction, and I think at the end of the day, the Mexican national team is the biggest asset for TV broadcasting in Mexico, in the U.S. Yes, they qualified, the U.S. lost. You can say, hey, they're second, they're going to Qatar. But we all know they weren't happy. I saw El Tata Martino didn't even stay on the pitch to celebrate with his players. He went directly to the locker room, and we heard el fuera Tata, fuera Tata. Yes, Mexico's in the World Cup. The fans, as you can hear, aren't happy.
John, we can hear the Fuera Tata chants right there. So let me ask you, for Tata Martino, what's the next week look like for Tata Martino? And do you feel like he will be on that flight to Qatar with the Mexican national team?
Well, what I've been told through some sources is the president of the Mexican Federation, John de Luisa, that it's going to be in Qatar for the World Cup draw. After he comes back to Mexico, he has to present his point of view, his suggestions. I've heard it's April 7th, April 8th, and then the owners are going to take a decision. I have a feeling that Tata is going to have a hard time being the head coach in Qatar. Look at what people are saying, what the atmosphere is around. I just don't see it. And I'll tell you something that I thought, and I said it today on SportsCenter. I didn't see the players going crazy and celebrating and taking out their shirt and say, Tata, we're with you, Tata, estamos contigo. So I just don't see that punch. Erk, you played, and I just don't see the Mexican team saying, Tata, we're with you, we want to be in Qatar. I wouldn't be surprised if a change is coming.
There was a moment, right, after the Uriel Antuna goal where it seemed like a few of the players kind of went over and patted him on the back, maybe something there. John, as far as possible candidates to replace Tata, give us some names, and is the Federation thinking more bombero, like a short-term fix, or are they thinking more long-term for this next hire if they do indeed move on from Tata Martino?
Sebas, that's a great question. I can tell you that several owners that I know are thinking of El Piojo Miguel Herrera as plan B. But at the same time, they got to figure out that if Miguel Herrera comes, is he the one who's going to have a 4-year span? Don't forget that Mexico is going to be hosting the World Cup of 2026. Maybe we'll have a surprise. I have a gut feeling that Tigres is going to be looking for a head coach. I know John de Luisa and Gerardo Torrado respect and want Tata to stay. So next week when he gives his reports to the owners, they'll have to decide But I think on Monday, Eric, you heard El Piojo. He's ready to jump and come back to the Mexican national team. We'll have to wait till next week.
John, it is interesting, right? Because Piojo's not the only one that's ready to jump to the national team. We also heard some comments from Hugo Sanchez, who said that he would do it for free. What's been the reaction in Mexico to the guys like Piojo and the guys like Hugo, essentially kind of asking for this job publicly while Tata Martino is still sitting in the chair?
Well, I can tell you Tata was very mad. He didn't like, especially what Miguel Herrera said about he shouldn't be flying if he's flying to Argentina. They're not happy with him. I don't think Hugo Sanchez is considered by the owners. A name I can drop that I wouldn't be surprised is Víctor Manuel Bucetich. Remember Bucetich at one point was given the opportunity, then he was taken out because they were worried about Mexico not qualifying for the World Cup. And who came in? Miguel Herrera. So I would say the main option, if Tata doesn't remain as head coach of the Mexican team, is Miguel Herrera. But I wouldn't be surprised, Víctor Manuel Bucetich also. Because remember, you got 8 months for Qatar, but you also have to plan ahead and think, if you're ever going to win a World Cup to be played in Mexico, US, and Canada, you got to make sure you plan. But I'll tell you something. In 2014, it all happened, and who was the head coach in Brazil? El Piojo. 8 years later, the same cycle seems to repeat itself. Will it be Miguel Herrera? I wouldn't be surprised, guys.
All right, there he is, John Sutclif, the man with the info, the man with the access, and the man with los aficionados outside Estadio Azteca. John, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it as always.
A pleasure, guys.
There he is, John Sutclif. What a legend. And really, you hear John's report. You also hear the fans. They tell us their own stories with their chants. They opened the shot chanting Chicharito. So you know the Mexican fans right now perhaps not happy with their team, especially not happy with their attack. And maybe there you see some of why.